Now that our homepage has some imagery and typography, it's time to add a bit of color. I have 2 color tips I want to share with you when it comes to designing for web or any digital platform for that matter. Number 1, especially for a site like this where the platform is relying heavily on really high quality, cozy looking product images, we don't want to interfere with that by adding in too many other colors. So we want to keep it very neutral. This will really let the product images shine because that's truly what this site is all about. Which brings me to tip number 2. Neutrals are great, but it's good to avoid stark black and stark white. These colors can actually cause eye strain for viewers over time, so it's good to avoid them in order to have a site that's really comfortable to read and browse through. For Fernie, I really like the idea of a nice off-white background. I'm just gonna grab a rectangle here to play around with some colors. So you can see at the moment we have this stark white background. So we're gonna start with white, and I'm just looking on my color wheel here, and I'm going to pull down this circle so that it's ever so slightly more gray. And then in order to bring that warmth in, that's gonna go really well with all the product imagery on this site, I'm going to bring in a little bit of yellow. So I'm going to go, down here until we've reached yellow. Then I'm going to bring this over ever so slightly into the color yellow over here. And I'm just going to play with this until it's something that I really like. And I can sort of imagine what it could look like on this homepage. So instead of using this rectangle, let's actually see what it's gonna look like on the homepage. Okay, after playing around a bit, I have settled on this color that I really like. So I'm just going to grab a rectangle and sample it so that we can kind of create a color palette over here as we go. And something that's also helpful in Figma, if you're having a hard time seeing colors on this gray background, you can actually change the color of the background at any time. So just go on up here, if you just click on the background and go up to page and click on this. I'm just gonna make it like a little bit darker so that this stands out more. You could also make it stark white, but again, that kind of strains my eyes, so I'm just gonna make it a little bit darker for now. Okay, cool. So then instead of using stark black, let's try to pick like an off black. So I'm just gonna do the same exact thing. I'm starting with black and I'm staying in this yellow family to really kind of keep that warmth in there and keep the white and the black consistent with each other. So I did play around with this for a while and came up with a color that works really well with this. So you might look at these and think, okay, that's just black and white, but let's really compare them to black and white. Let's make this white and make this stark black. You can see that these two here have a lot more character, warmth, and sort of like depth to them. They're just a bit more unique versions of this black and white. So I think that is a really good starting point, especially for this furniture brand where you want it to feel really warm and cozy and inviting. Now I'm thinking we might need a tertiary color just for some small details throughout the site. I'm thinking we might have sort of like a strike through price if something's on sale, and we might want to have the sale price be a color that stands out a bit more. Maybe we want to have badges on some of our products that are either on sale or new or featured. So let's figure out what we want that sort of pop of color to be, more or less. So in looking at the product imagery again, we want to keep it really warm. So I'm thinking something like a burnt orange would be really nice. So I'm just going to play around until I find something that I think works. Okay, I like how this is looking. And for our just the sake of representing these colors, I'm going to make the burnt orange smaller so that we know it's just sort of a detail color. Okay, so here is our color palette here. Now, to make sure that we like these, we already applied the background. Let's apply everything else. So I'm just going to select on everything that's currently white, and I'm going to sample this color. Now, we're going to be saving these colors in a library soon, and I'm going to be showing you exactly how to do that to stay really organized in Figma. But for the time being, again, we're just experimenting. We're making sure that these colors are going to work for us. Okay, and then anything that is currently stark black, I'm going to sample our new off black color. And we're just going to make sure this looks good. So for the time being, this gray is kind of putting me off. So I'm going to make these just like the dark color. In fact, I think this footer could look good, this darker color. Okay, so now I can kind of see this is looking how we want it to look. I'm wondering actually if we should reverse this. So let's make the fill this color, the background, and we'll make the text white. Yeah, I think that's just like a little bit more dynamic and I think stands out a bit more, feels more cozy. Okay, looking pretty good. I do want to add one tip here when it comes to using colors for a client project. So for this is obviously a project that we're just making up as practice and just for fun. But if you're working with clients, it might be the case where you've already got colors to work with. But one tip that I want to leave you with is to make sure you're testing the brand's colors for accessibility. And what I mean by that is the contrast between, let's just say we're designing a button. Does it contrast enough so that it's easy to read? There are plugins that make this really easy, such as Stark, which is something we'll look at later in this course when we talk about plugins I'd recommend. But what I wanted to really share is that anytime you have a color that you want to use or a brand wants to use, but it's not accessible, the contrast isn't good enough to pass that AA compliance, I will always recommend a darker color or a slightly lighter color to my clients. Really test some things out, see what I think still sort of maintains that integrity of the brand without compromising on accessibility. So that's something that I'd highly recommend doing if you're working on web design projects for clients, and you have any control whatsoever on recommending things about color. That's something that I will always do if I think it's going to be an issue. And that's because these compliance issues can become legal issues. There's very real, kind of consequences that can come from not designing with accessibility in mind. So I just wanted to throw that in there as we're talking about colors. Now that we've got some colors picked out for our site though, in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to save these into a library in Figma and also create a shareable style guide for your clients or any other stakeholders that might want to have these styles sort of outlined for them.